So I know that this Inyan of Purim is got some things in it or some descriptions in it that are really deep Kabbalah. It's not that easy for me to say, and I worry about whether I'm saying something that's going to be too hard for people to understand. But let's say it like this. For creation to take place, the female and male elements of the world need to face each other. This is what the Rab says. But the normal state, because of the way that God created the world, and He created another side, an opposing force, something that would make it impossible or possible for us to make mistakes. Because of that, the male and the female elements normally and during the weekdays are back to back, protective, in a protective form. And so therefore, before there could be any wedding, any mating of the male and female force, that it's necessary for all of these things to be built up and to be able, that is, the male and the female to be built up so that they can stand alone, and particularly for the female who's mostly exposed to the most difficult parts of life, be able to come around, be independent, and be able to face the man. Now, for this to happen, he says the Rav is teaching us a shtickle Torah. This is called panim b'panim, face to face. The opposite is called ach ba'ach, backward, back to back. They were back to back, and one back between them. Remember the metaphor of Adam and Eve, right? She was a part of him, and then she got separated. It's called an asira. All these things are real mystical ideas. But at any rate, in the spiritual world, which was really the incipience of the flow of the bracha that we need to get to ourselves. So in that spiritual world, in order for galus to take place, in order for the sun to shine properly, you need the male and the female together and mate. They have to be face to face to do that. This is a process like this. The normal state is that the male gives to the female, just like we have here. This is that in the mating of men and women, this is the male has a seed, and he plants that seed inside of a woman. In every aspect of life where there is mating going on. Well, this is true also in the master worlds, in the worlds of spirituality, for the source of all bracha that comes from the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. This is that for the mating to take place. We need this to be in, because the face always represents kindness. So the face always represents the ultimate that can be given from one to the next. So we had this situation. Before this mating could take place, there is a sleep which has to go over the male part. Now, as I said before, as you're listening to the shiur, you have to think about this in cyclical terms. Okay, and the cosmic forces that are going on in here, because this is a cosmic story. Now, most people, when you learn about Purim, and there's a lot to be said about it, it's a fantastic story. It's just a wonderful, wonderful story. And in its way, it's a metaphor for the Gula that is coming. So the story, the cosmic forces here, is just imagine wherever you are as you're listening to this, that you're, as I said before, you're on a ball that is rotating. It's not staying still. You're not in a static position. Your life is also a rotation for the time that you're born and the time you go back to the ground where you came from. So that all of this is a part of a cycle that we're in. Now, in the days of yore, way back when, at the time of Haman, Achashverosh, Mordechai, and Esther, there was a great, tremendous revelation of what was going on in this cycle. Everybody was aware of that. Well, sort of everyone, every learned person understood the cycles of the heavens and how everything is really moving in tandem. The Jews, for our own sins, we lost our Beis Hamikdash. And it was prophesied that there were going to be 70 years that we were going to be in exile, and then we would return. So they made a mistake in the count, and Achashverosh said that the count was over. He started this party. And the whole idea there was really to make it impossible for the Jews to ever return and to build a presence in this world for the Almighty. So this is really, who these good guys are. Now, here's the language of the Rav, who referred to the Ari as the Rav, in the Shar Kavanos. So he says like this. So he says that the Yelske Inyan Mordechai be'Esther koyi besofa shvim shona shel galus Bavel k'noida. So it was at the end of the 70 years. Again, there's a misinterpretation of when the 70 years started, when it ended. K'noida the chain az kavar b'mehem, because now we're starting to get, like we say today, we're in the ikvus, the heels of the Mashiach. So things are going much faster, but at the same time, they're also darker in many different ways. B'meichem hiskil inyan tikun za v'nuk. So that the time that the male and the female forces, spiritual forces that have direct impact on us, were going to be rebuilt. Kedei lachsor apim ba'apim, so that they should be able to come face to face. V'yigalu Yisrael, and then we would be redeemed, and we'd be able to go back and rebuild the temple. So the idea of this beginning, Hazikar, Zuhi Inyan Hador Mita, Shanaasa Az B'Yameha. Without even going into it, in order to build up the female, that she should be strong enough on her own, whatever was possessed inside of the male had to be transferred over to her. For that to happen, he has to go to sleep. Now, Haman is a man who is watching, he's an astrologer, and he's watching the heavens. So he understands about the 70 years, and he understands the patterns and the cycles of the heavens and how everything is moving in tandem. And he sees that a big sleep is coming over the progenitor of the Jewish people, or what's the right word? The provider of the Jewish people, the mashpia to the Jewish people, which we call, in Kabbalah, is called Zer Anpin. It's deep, deep, deep within reality. So he says, so this is called the dormita, the sleep. And this sleep is a tremendous pain for the Jewish people, tremendous suffering for the Jewish people. But it requires faith. So he says, Share alav ne'emer v'hine ema chashecha gedola, there was a fear of tremendous darkness. And it goes on in the Rav quotes for Amar Rizal, chashecha zu galas madai, so this is the galas that we went to in media, which is the same area, the same idea. Shehechshech enechem sheisol, that our eyes become darkened and we began to lose hope. V'anyanu hu lefi she'oz hoyizah b'so the dormita, and that is the reason why, is because the male force of the universe, as we can relate to it, which is Zer Anpin, has gone into sleep. Astrologos gadol. He was a tremendously wise astrologer. Poor. So that's where we see that we have this idea of that he cast a lot. The lot is again to test into how the cycles are working, because the lot, he throws it out there and it's all moving along together. He said to who a girl miyom liyom. So he put this every day that he would go, and apparently that's what it sounds like. I'm not going to go into the detail on that. He said that it sounds like every day he's looking to see exactly how the timing would work out. And we know from other places that he chose a specific time because of the death of Moshe Rabbeinu. Let's see what happens. Proper Mashud is Bar B'Sefer Zohar. The Zohar says like this: Yehuva Aseres Bonav, he and his 10 sons, Kololim Kol Asara Klipim HaChitzonim. So we have 2 different words: Klipa, which means a shell, means something that's empty but looks like something, and Chitzoni means that it's outside of Kedusha. It's no Kedusha. It's all sucking, all selfishness. They represented all the 10 forces, he and his sons, the 10 forces of selfishness. So he knew, in his wisdom, so he could see in the cosmos how it was that the darkening effect was coming on to the mazel of the Jewish people. I'd say that Zah is going to sleep. So it's like sleeping. So therefore he thought like this: so the people that they hated, the Jewish people, now is the time to wipe them out and take this whole inyan about this, whatever the Jews represent, and get rid of it. Achashverosh wasn't any better. He had to stop what was going on. There was a previous king had started up the idea of rebuilding the base of Mikdash. He had to stop that. So he's going to stop that, and he's going to make it possible for, let's figure it out. Is this a good time to get him or not? If they say that the Haman has got this all figured out now, he sees the pattern, he sees that Zah is falling into the dormita, that he's going to sleep, and there will be no direct relationship for the Jewish people. So he asks a question, and then Haman answered, there is this people, as is stated over there in the words of the Megillah. So the rabbis explain over there that he saw that their God was sleeping. That's the way he understood it. Now the big difference between the Gentiles and their astrology and us is that they don't have a Hashem Yisbarach in their astrology. So all they have is the planets, the planetary system, which is really basically 7 planets, down to 7 again. So if you look at the system, they say, well, that system is like moving along by itself. That's what. So they try to figure out how to influence the moving of it. If it's possible to pray to a star, or possible to pray to a planet, to be able to pray, to offer sacrifices to it. As I realize it's Hashem that created the whole system, and that's where we're coming in. But they see that our aspect is now going away, being absent. That's a surprising thing, is that the darkness that we've gone through, or that we go through, and this is even true in our personal lives. A lot of times the darkest parts of our lives are a transition that brings us, if we can have faith, that it's a transition that can bring us to a much higher level. Because that's the spread, that's how bracha works. So bracha works in its Tzimtzum. We've already seen that. So he says, Kadesha to Nasar on the cave. So why? So that you could bring up the female, which is the reproductive part, the part that brings out the neshamas chadashos, new neshamos into the world, and real great revelation of godliness, sweetness, beauty, and joy into the world. That has to happen by building her up. So in order for her to be built up, you have to take away from the male part in order to give to her. So he said, and as a result of that, in the end, it's going to come out that we're going to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, they took counsel amongst themselves. So when he saw that their God, the way he understood it, the power of this God is diminishing to the point where it's actually gone to sleep. Yakdimo heim la'ave v'lahashmed sonechem shel Yisaweh. So that he thought that at that time that it would be the right time to destroy the Jews. So there shouldn't even been a little bit, a tiny bit of the Jews. Hitler. The Geula, in some way that they should be left alive so that they can find themselves fit to be redeemed. And as a result of that, they would get to a point where they wouldn't be able to build the Beis Hamikdash back again. There would be no presence of God in the world revealed to the whole world, and they'd have just the power to do whatever they wanted. So V'noda Eitzas Haman. So let's understand what was the advice of Haman. Min Shamshe Sifra Beno V'Ksivehem. So he knew from his children. They actually took notes on this. El Achashverosh Hanikra Artashchasa. So Achashverosh, we call him Artashchasa. But Sefer Ezra, we see over there. So we have notes on all of this. Ad Shebitlu Binyan Beis Hamikdash, because they had stopped the construction of the Beis Hamikdash. Birosam ki higia zemana lehibonos v'dai b'zeh. I didn't want to talk about the Rab. Didn't want to talk about it too much more. So he says this is the real secret. So now we haven't really gotten to what the real secret is, and the Rab wants to tell us a little about Mordechai. I'm a little bit hesitant to go into it because we just don't have that much Kabbalistic background. Remember that I told you that there were 2 different ways. I said this a few times now, that the Rav says that we could use these ways these 2 ways to understand creation and really where we are in the world. And one of those ways, and that's the only one that I've talked about so far, one of these ways is using our bodies. Mi bisari el echezel loa. Will be able to see godliness in the pure spiritual world by looking at my own body. So as we understood, the male and the female, they always go together. In the world that we live in, they're separate. They're not the same physical form. But in spiritual worlds, especially as we get to the higher spiritual worlds, they're indivisible, and you can't really hardly tell or explain what the difference would be between them, except that they always work in the same pattern. That is, the pattern is that the male receives from up above, from a female element up above him, and gives it over to his female element, like that, and they reproduce, they bring out more light, and like that. So that's a lot of background. There's a lot of Kabbalah in this. I'd like to get into in maybe one more lecture about this. To sum this up, we have to think that we are moving towards. Look at the sun. The stars outside. Look at the sun. The sun is getting brighter and brighter every day. As we said before, that there were two cycles in the year. There's a female cycle and male cycle. The female cycle starts with tremendous amount of with the bursting of spring, and then coming up to a high point, which would be the what we call the solar. It's not the equinox. It would be the solstice in June 21st. Then it starts going down. As it starts going down, as it's going up, we come to Shavuos, and as it starts going down, then we start seeing Shabbos and V'Tammuz. We see Tisha B'av, and we see Elul reaching down to a bottom place where the male starts. He starts as things start to get darker. And then they go darker and darker and darker until we're coming over here now to Adar. So Haman is figuring, so now, look, the power of this sun is if we don't get him now, now's the time we got to get him. But look what's happening. Everything is building up, it's building up, and it's building. There's always already a taste after Purim, immediate taste of the ultimate redemption, which takes place in Pesach. So we're already starting to have that a little bit happening over here. And this is part of the message. It's that we are in a cycle. Our lives are cycling, and we are moving in tandem with this holiday, which this holiday is happening again the same way to bring this tremendous amount of light. And the next time we'll try to talk a little bit, because it's more anatomically difficult, to talk about what is the root of Mordechai. Who is the root of Mordechai? What is the root of Mordechai and Esther? So thank you very much for listening. And I hope I'm making some points here. And the main thing is to enjoy. Thanks.